Today I want to talk a little bit about one of my most strongly held beliefs, which is this idea that probably all of you have thought about but have never put words to. And that is this question or this belief that humans are inherently destructive. So when I got into permaculture and I started getting into renewable energy and basically regenerative enterprise, one of the things that I held as a deeply held belief right at the very beginning, or started to hold this belief when I started learning about peak oil and climate change, environmental destruction, was this idea that humans only had one mode of operandi, which was that we are a destructive species. And there's plenty of evidence to indicate that this belief is true. And so it's a pretty negative place to be. It's a place of despair, if you will. And the thing is, you can't turn on Facebook or read the newspaper or watch the news, any media source basically, without coming to that conclusion. You see forests getting taken down, oil wells being produced, emissions being put into the atmosphere. It becomes a confirmation bias. It becomes something that you believe really deeply because you're constantly surrounded by it. And the thing is that the news has a bias. They're biased to get you to buy media. And they know something about the human brain that most of us are ignorant of, which is that they make money by getting you to react. And they know that you'll react more to negative news than to positive news. And so it's actually in their best interest to continue to perpetuate this myth that humans are inherently destructive. Now, as I said earlier, there's a lot of evidence to show that this is actually the case. And so I've thought a lot about ecology and humanity and where we actually exist and belong within the larger ecosystem. And it wasn't until I had kids that I started to really form a strong opinion about this. You see, kids are running primarily on instinct, which comes from their genes. At least that's my belief. They're obviously learning a lot and their behaviors are changing as they learn, but for a large part of a kid's life, they just are. And if I were to give you a tour of our backyard right now, what you'd notice is that it's in chaos right now. It's in chaos in spite of the fact that I'm trying to constantly clean up after my kids. And that's because kids are entropy generators. They basically create disorder. Anybody out there that are parents right now know that no matter what it is that you do to try and keep your yard clean or your house clean, the kids just basically destroy it. And so if you kind of scale that up and look at the larger world, what you'll notice is that when humans go in and create a mine or we extract resources, we might look at things in terms of the order that we've created in doing so, but we're actually creating chaos, we're actually creating entropy. Most of what humans do is entropy generation. Now, if you're not familiar with the word entropy, it's basically a measure of disorder. So a really clean and tidy room has a low level of entropy. A really disordered room has a high level of entropy. And truthfully, the planet is constantly moving to higher orders of entropy. Basically, it's wearing down, it's running down. And the solution to entropy, at least on a planetary scale, are glaciation. So every once in a while, the sun cools down, a glaciation comes in, covers the planet in ice, moves a whole bunch of soil around, builds new mountains, and the world starts over again, basically. And then over the next million or multiple million or billion years, the planet wears down again until it goes into a state of reset. And it'll keep doing that until the sun runs out. So when I think about what our role as humans are on the planet, I think back to what our kids seem to constantly do naturally, and that is we are here to basically create entropy. In ecology, we use a slightly different word. We call it disturbance. And one of this, coming back to our underlying belief that humans are inherently destructive, another word that constantly gets used to describe humans is this idea of footprint. Now, footprint for most people has a very negative connotation. Same with the word disruption or disturbance. And so we have to actually take some of the emotion out of these words and try and understand at the root what it is that these words are actually describing. Now, if you've never thought about this, I mean, this whole concept between moving towards net neutral housing and xeriscaping and reducing our footprint basically is insinuating that at best we can be neutral. At best we can reduce our footprint. And it's actually a completely hopeless concept, because what it's actually saying is that we can't help but being bad, but we can make ourselves a little bit less bad. And so when I teach a permaculture design course, what I'm really trying to convey to the people that take that course is that no, actually, it's not about being less bad. It's about optimizing your entropy. It's about optimizing your disruption and your disturbance. Because you can be just as positive as you are negative. You see, ecosystems require disturbance. Ecosystems require disruption. They require us to actually modify the ecosystem. And the easiest way for people to understand this is to think about their own bodies. So let me give you a couple of examples. If you just sit on your butt all day long and watch television and drink beer and eat junk food, you're going to get obese and your body is going to atrophy. It's going to get weaker, your muscles are going to disappear, your bone density is going to go down. Things are generally going to get bad for you. The opposite of that is actually to create a disruption or a disturbance or a bit of volatility in your body through lifting weight, whether that's through farming or whether that's actually going to a gym. Now, weightlifting, which is our human version of disruption on our own body or disturbance or footprint, needs to happen within a specific dose-dependent amount. If you get the dosage right, you get stronger, your bones get more dense, your cardiovascular health improves, all of your health metrics get better. If you do too much, you actually go backwards as well, and so that's a form of negative disturbance. And as we mentioned before, if you don't do enough, you also move back. That's another form of negative disturbance or not enough disturbance. And so disturbance or footprint or disruption has to happen within a specific dose-dependent amount. Well, ecologies are the same thing. Everything in the world creates a disturbance or a disruption. Newton had it right when he said that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you cannot help but have a footprint. You cannot help but create disruption or disturbance in your day-to-day life. But what you can do is you can decide on how every hour of life energy is going to be spent and whether or not that disturbance is going to be within a specific dose-dependent amount that's actually going to make ecosystems better. So if the most negative thing on the planet is the nuclear bomb, then what's the most positive? And that's the question that I put back to you is, if you have 600,000 hours of life energy on this planet, how are you going to spend those how are you going to spend that life energy, and how are you going to focus that energy with regards to the disturbance that you create on this planet? Are you going to increase entropy in a way that is going to be destructive to biodiversity and ecosystems and humanity? Or are you going to figure out how to manage that disturbance in a way that actually makes the planet better? And I'm just going to finish with one other example that kind of brings that disturbance concept out into ecology. Pastures, grasslands, need disturbance. If you overgraze, if you keep cows on a pasture for too long, you're actually going to reduce the carbon in the soil, you're going to compact the earth, you're going to reduce the density of grasses on the surface of the earth, so you're actually going to move towards desertification. You're going to reduce the diversity of grasses. If that grassland doesn't get grazed, it actually also will atrophy. It's going to go in the wrong direction. So a lot of the ideas around whether cows are good or bad are completely misplaced. Cows are neither good nor bad. You go back 200-300 years in North America, we actually didn't have cows here. We had bison and buffalo. These animals were managed by predators, carnivores like wolves, that were actually managing the disturbance of those animals on a day-to-day basis. As we got rid of those carnivores and we got rid of that disturbance, those predators, humans took the place of those predators, and because we're lazy, we just fenced off square quarter sections, 168 acre pastures, and we let the cows just kind of do whatever they want, which actually generally moves pastures in the wrong direction. So what Joel Salatin is doing, what a lot of progressive farmers in North America are doing right now, is they're saying, okay, we're stuck with these quarter sections that are fenced, but we can use electric wire to mimic the pattern of the wolf or of the predators and move our cows along on a more regular basis, which actually acts, it's kind of like CrossFit for pastures. It's getting the disturbance pattern right, getting the pastures to lift enough weight by applying the right number of cows for the right number of days in a specific area. And when that happens, what's interesting about grasslands is that they start to grow. The carbon levels start to go up. Every 1% of carbon that increases on a grassland will increase the amount of water holding capacity by 144,000 liters per hectare of land. So I think what I want to leave with today is that Michelle and I quit our oil and gas jobs almost 10 years ago, and we went into this as technicians to make change in the world. We went in this to build swales and ponds and pastures and low energy buildings and renewable energy systems. We didn't go in this to address the mythology that we have as a species. And what we've realized is that change is not actually limited right now based on the technology or our knowledge, our scientific knowledge about ecosystems. It's not a technical challenge. What it actually is a challenge around the discourse that we use on a day-to-day basis. It's the conversations that we're having. And so a lot of times when I talk to people that are still working jobs that they don't like, what comes out of those conversations is that, oh, we don't have the technology to move away from oil and gas, or we can't help but being destructive or negative on the planet. When you start traveling around the world and seeing other cultures and other societies, what you realize is that they are stuck within their own myths and limiting beliefs as well, just like we are. And so I think one of the best uses of fossil fuel is actually travel, in that you can start to challenge your limiting beliefs by looking at what other cultures have as limiting beliefs and recognizing that they have the ability to move beyond the limiting beliefs that we currently hold within our existing culture. And you realize that a lot of times, because change is something that we don't really like as a species generally, we're all kind of running software like Windows 98, and if you remember what Windows 98 was like, every time you have a problem in Windows 98, you get the blue screen of death and you just hit reset. We have to stop hitting reset within our day-to-day lives, and we have to start changing the operating system that we run on. And only once we do that will we actually start to see change within our society. And so, as I've taught the permaculture design course now almost 25 times, what I've come to realize is that the permaculture design course is not about gardening, it's not about low energy homes, although we talk about all that stuff. It's not about food forests, it's not about livestock, it's not about farming, even though we cover all of that stuff. What it's really about is changing the discourse. It's about changing the conversation. It's about proving to people with real examples that humans can be just as positive as they are negative. And once people realize that, and they can move beyond the guilt and beyond the shame and beyond the mourning for the planet and for our species, we can start to actually move towards a world that we all actually want. A world where regeneration is the norm, where sustainability is the practice, and where we can start to care for each other as a species. That's really what the permaculture design course is all about. So humans can be just as positive as we are negative. We just have to change our story and our mythology. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel and you want to hear more of this type of information, please make sure you subscribe below.
you.